and we'll give a big old welcome. Yes, we will. All right, we're getting close. Fingers crossed. Always nervous while waiting to go live. Come on. How long can you take? All right, here we go. Redirecting. Ah. There we go. There we go. I believe. Not sure what's going on here. Let's let everyone in and we'll figure it out together. Welcome, everybody. Just trying to organize the disarray of going live here for the first time in almost over a year. Trying to see if it's going to go live on a new page or if it will be live on the same page. I'm trying to figure this out right now. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Hash Church 5.0, episode 1 with Wade Laughter in the house, dude. Good to see you, man. Really good to see you.
Thank you, Marcus.
Yeah, man. It was nice to see your email come in being like, hell yeah, I'll join for an episode of Hash Church. It's been too long. The funny things that come and go in our lives and we sort of just don't even realize we miss them. But this is one of them for me, man. I missed hanging out and seeing you on a weekly basis.
Yes, let's do it some more.
Absolutely. I'm trying to figure out if it went live on the same page that I created or if it created a new page. Kind of having a hard time figuring that out, but
you're not live on YouTube.
What do you mean?
Or I don't see you live on YouTube.
Yeah, we're live on YouTube.
Really?
I can send you the link if you like. Hey, welcome.
I have it in front of me. I guess maybe I'll try refreshing it.
It went to a different page, Thomas. It didn't. Oh. It does it to me all the time. I go to open live on Zoom, and it opens a completely different YouTube. So I'm a little bit not doing it right. You'll have to help me for next week. And okay. In the meantime, we're live on YouTube. I can see it. There's 59 people watching right now. And all I usually do is I go into the one that's live and then I go into the one that's not live and I just send the link a bunch of times. But it seems like a ton of people, they must have gotten the notification or something.
Gotcha, I see.
All right, well, welcome. Ryan's in the house, Papa Sif. That's my homie in Michigan. He runs the Bubble Man brand in the lab and makes all of our live hash rosin and hash hits and traditional hash and all the products that we're making over in Michigan. And Ryan really, he's been indispensable help over there. And key helper, I thought, well, I'm going to invite him onto Hash Church, create some new panelists. So welcome to you, homie. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. Of course. And welcome to Mojave as well. Mr. Richmond's in the house. Good to see you, dude.
Good to be here, man. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude. Absolutely. A little rusty, but no, Thomas, you'll have to help me. I did all the key and the this and the that, and I must have done it wrong, and that's why it didn't go live on the actual.
No worries.
page.
Yeah, we'll be able to help. I can help you with that. No worries.
I also edited it right at the end of the day and changed I added episode 1, and that might have also glitched it out. But for whatever reason, it shows that we're live. We've got 75 people watching us at 9:03. So here we are. It feels good, man. I know Skunkman Sam's going to be popping in. I think Dr. Mark said he would be making an appearance. So I'll just hit up Sam real quick, make sure he's all good. Etienne is out of town, so we won't be seeing him today, but hopefully we see him in the next in the next couple of weeks or so if we keep going here. Tell you, the first time I started Hash Church, I think I did 162 Sundays in a row. And that was absolutely insane. Around 140, my wife sort of pulled me aside and she's like, "What's wrong with you? Like, what are you, what are you doing?" It was so stressful trying to make sure the episode was perfect, that the panelists would show up, that everything would start on time, that I would have internet, depending on the country that I was in. And now it's just much more relaxed. So I'm happy to just catch up with you guys, get a little update from everyone in regards to how you're doing and what you've been up to. And, it's been a long year, and I'm sure life has been a hard year, not just a long year. It's been one of those years that's kind of like, whew, geez, get that one under our belt and move on to the next year if we can.
Bizarre world, man.
What's that?
It's been a bizarre world year.
It has been a bizarro world year, Anyone that's eaten enough psychedelics can know that the energy in the world right now is very intense. There's almost like you can just feel something going on underneath in a way that. Hey, Dr. Mark.
Hey, what's up? How are you?
Dude, how are you doing, man? Oh, that's it. He's like, "I'm out of here." I thought this was
These
a
guys.
fish show. It'll be back. All right, so audio is good. Not sure. Marcus says the usual mic settings. Is the audio okay? Yeah, okay. We're good. Fall before the storm. Oh, it did just say something went wrong here. Let me see what's going on. Host on YouTube Live. Something went wrong. Of course, something went wrong. I think we lost our. Oh no, we're good. This one's live. This one's not.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Dr. Mar. Oh, I thought he just popped in. He's in and out. I'll tell you, if I ever took a hit and the smoke came out the color of the smoke on Thomas's room right now, I would absolutely, I'd be like, "What the fuck is this?"
I obviously clicked on the wrong window. Hey, welcome back, I guess, right?
Yes, welcome back, Dr. Mark. I thought maybe you were like, "This isn't a fish show. I'm out of here."
No,
Well, I'm gonna hit a nice little dab just to.
Hey, Wade, how are you? Mavi, Ryan, what's going on? Where's Sam? I don't see Sam.
Sam, I just sent him the link on Facebook 2 minutes ago. He definitely said he was going to be here, so we'll have to give him time.
He's
See
late
if
for
he's
the
gonna.
party.
Why did it go off again? Okay, there we go. I got to close that. Make sure we're live. Make sure we got the chat, and load up a bowl and start some conversations with you guys, because it has been way too long. Yeah, it's been a long year, as we were mentioning a little earlier on. I was thinking maybe Wade, it would be great to get an update from you, see what you've been up to in the last year, and catch us all up, man.
Well, glad to fill you all in, but I'll start by saying there's not been a lot of warm, fuzzy, friendly news. Cancer's a bear, to keep it as simple as possible. I've been dealing with multiple myeloma. I don't know if you all know that, but that's my situation. I was first diagnosed in the fall of 2020. At that point, according to my medical records, I had innumerable, this is a great phrase, innumerable lytic fractures, bone fractures, from my skull, my jaw, my neck, my chest, my rib cage, my pelvis, and my right femur. Innumerable lytic fractures where the bone gets eroded by the cancer. And to make it really short, the real issue here is pain. And I'm here to testify to the beauty and efficacy of cannabis in the relief of pain. I have, my oncologist asked me to stop smoking. Wow, that was a big deal. and I did. Now I make tinctures, high potency tinctures for myself, and I eat rosin and hashish. I found that there's really lovely tastes available by consumption into the gut versus inhaling. So that's a whole conversation. At the moment, I've just started chemotherapy again after being off of it since May. I suppose one of the things that I'm really looking forward to chatting with you all about is I came across a paper in a journal called Biofactors, and they looked at 3 different multiple myeloma cell lines and compared those multiple myeloma cell lines to how do they react to quote unquote minor phytocannabinoids. And it turns out, hello, CBG as in golf and CBN as in Nancy have really remarkable effects at slowing the growth of multiple myeloma cells and at the right dose, triggering cell death in multiple myeloma. I came across that paper on Monday of this past week, and I put out the word here in Nevada County in California, asking for help, specifically asking some of the manufacturers who had access to CBG material and or CBN. CBG, I'm really grateful. One of our local manufacturers supplied me with almost 30 grams of the high potency 50+% oil of CBG. Still working on trying to get some CBN. And I got to say, I feel really blessed to live in Nevada County, California. It's a small county. We've got about 100,000 people altogether in this county. But somehow or another, this is one of the places where organic agriculture, particularly in the cannabis realm, took root back in the 60s and 70s. Hell, there's one of the fellows I know here locally has been into minor quote unquote phytocannabinoids long enough that he bought the web domain name cbdoil.com back in the day for $8 and change. That's how long he's been in it. I want to name names. I mean, Vital Hotel Extracts, Flashka. I could go on and on. Emerald Bay Extracts. All of these people are making high potency oils and providing them not just to me, but to any person who shows up at our local dispensary with a cannabis recommendation. We have a program to give these products at no cost to the persons who need them. And for the first time, I'm actually a recipient of a program that I helped set up that way. And I would just sort of summarize my situation at the moment to say, my spirit, I feel very full of myself in the spirit, but the body is really having a lot of trouble. And I will note that for most people, multiple myeloma is not a fatal condition. It's other things that happen as a result of treating the condition that usually results in death. So I'm here for years to come. Let's keep doing hash church. I love talking about hash. Used to love smoking it. Now I love eating it. Really looking forward to hearing what all of y'all are up to and what's been going on. And yeah, I'll go back to listening. Much love. And thank you, Marcus. Really enjoy this opportunity to see some of the people I respect so much in this work. Thank you.
Yeah, agreed, Wade. And great to hear from you. And listen, if you want to share any of those names in the chat, I can put them in the description. So maybe some people who are living in your area hear what you say, and rather than, enable to shorten the ability for them to get to A to B, we can remove sort of all of the middle things by just putting up a few links for companies. We're not trying to blow companies up that are doing good work and donating, but I would also say perhaps for some of the growers that may be watching as well, if we put up these links, you know, maybe they won't just be people reaching out who need oil, but there'll be people reaching out who have biomass to donate for companies like this that can give that oil away. Because without that aspect, it's really just out of pocket for the one group. And what a great thing to be a part of, you know, gifting out oil to people who are really in the need. You know, a lot of people are looking to fill a hole in their soul right now, and it doesn't happen with new Nikes and Bugatti Veyrons. It happens by serving the people. And when you can do that, you will feel, you know, God or whatever it is you believe in your heart by serving others. And I always feel it when Wade comes in and shares with us. It's so crazy to think 10 years ago, he was sharing about the Harlequin and about like creating and doing this work himself, giving away biomass. And now he's on the receiving end of it in this beautiful sort of karmic retribution where it just came right around and said, hey, homie, like you took care of so many people for so long. Now there's going to be people taking care of you. So it's really quite powerful to see. Welcome to Best Friend Farms, who just popped in. You know, we're just chilling out. You probably caught the end of Wade's update. He's been fighting the good fight against cancer and
Looking good.
And yeah, and looking good, man. And you know, didn't even skip a beat. Doctor told him he couldn't smoke anymore. He's like, he's gobbling it down, which I will say, I have never seen a human being eat more cannabinoids in my life than Thomas up in the corner of the screen with the rain falling down. That fucking guy ate like 24. Every time I say this, he's like, oh, it wasn't that much, man. It was only like 1,800. No, it was 2,400 milligrams for a plane ride. I can't remember if it was Berlin or Barcelona. It was one of those places. But this gets into the chemistry and the science of the body. Obviously, Mark, we're all metabolizing at different rates. How is it that someone can get destroyed by 2 milligrams and another person can take 2,400 milligrams and totally be cognitive, talking to me, like right sitting next to me, like, hey, man, you want a bagel?
CBD.
CBT, no, it was THC. THC is what he was consuming. I just, yeah, it's mind blowing to think that someone could consume that much. I don't mind eating it myself, but I'm kind of like, once I get into the 30 milligram range, that's like, I'm like more high than I want to be. You know, I'm good with 10 and 20. I don't know about the rest of the group here. I probably got some hundos in the mix, but
It depends how bioavailable it is, right? I mean,
but does it not also depend on how you metabolize in your liver?
Right.
Well, yeah, yeah, it depends on a lot of things, you know. Like, if it's THCA, right? It's one thing. If it's THC, it's another, right? But
Right.
yeah, I think that like if you're just eating hash, if just a lot of it is just going to be sort of, you know, making it down to the gut. Yeah, it's probably entering in the system more in the stomach than in the liver. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's bioavailable, you know, when it gets metabolized, and yeah,
Right.
I mean that's probably helping him in great ways. And then, you know, I mean, again, this is like the full, what did we call this? The entourage effect or ensemble effect or whatever. The fact that CBN and CBG both play a role. So you'd imagine that, you know, you could almost dial that in to a specific oil that's got a specific amount of CBN. That's what I was going to ask you, Wade. I mean, like, what's effective in terms of CBN concentration in the products that you're taking? I mean, is it highly concentrated CBN? Because actually there is CBN isolate, but I think it's completely synthetic that's out there. But there's also just high, you know, in concentration CBN oil. Are you doing more of a full spectrum or isolate treatment?
I have not had any success so far in sourcing CBN, particularly at the quantities of milligrams that I'm hoping to be able to access. Yeah, I have access to abundant CBG, still working on CBN. And from my point of view, one of the things I think is most interesting is the cannabinoids that are produced very early in the plant's life cycle and the degradation products at the end of the plant's life cycle show the greatest promise for this particular cancer. And it's intriguing to me that as a consumer of cannabis, I tended to avoid CBG and CBN.
Right, right.
Of course, I don't see any anti-cancer effects from my cannabis consumption. And that was always puzzling to me. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there's something that's going on to make sort of so-called compliant distillate. So when they distill, quote unquote hemp, like it's like a 21 variety or better or something like that, and you still have enough THC in the distillate, what they've been doing is if you heat up that distillate and bubble air through it, the air will oxidize the THC and convert it over to CBN, such that you can actually make a quote unquote compliable oil that's below the 0.3 threshold. Because a lot of these distillates are like a couple percent in THC. And even you could do this at the crude level too. So it's just like a crude ethanol extract. If you bubble air through while you're heating the oil, the air will convert the THC into CBN. So you might be able to do that on your own and not have to rely on somebody else providing it to you.
Thank you, Mark. That sounds like a plan. I will be talking to some of our local manufacturers. Thank you.
Yeah, they do that to make so-called they call it remediated oil, or what's called tea-free oil or tea-free distillate. And the way that they're pulling off that stunt is by in that process you don't lose a lot of your CBD. You could eventually start converting some of your CBD, but you could sort of finesse that process to basically remove THC or get it below the detectable limit, or at least below the 0.3 limit, and make it what's called tea-free. So when you see that category of tea-free distillate or tea-free crude, that's probably how they did it, which is this remediation process by using just simply air.
Yeah, we have it available in Canada by the liter, CBN.
Tea-free?
It's fairly pure, but it's expensive. It's like last time I checked, I think it was $11,000 a liter, whereas like distillate, like THC or CBD is, I want to say like below $2, like maybe under $1 even, somewhere around there anyway, per gram.
Yeah, so you could buy CBN isolate for cheaper than that. Right now, CBN isolate down here is somewhere like about 3,000 or 4,000 a kilo. American.
This will be from a plant like derived right from cannabis for sure. I don't think that Canada allows any type of synthesis on cannabinoids.
This is completely synthetic, Mark.
Yeah. No, I knew. That's why I mentioned it. I figured you were talking about the synthetic.
I couldn't. I was actually talking with someone yesterday, and they said it was $1,200 in Canada for distillate that was 92% THC. I was kind of mind blown by it, $1.20.
Yeah.
I was like, well, what's the point of growing when you can buy it at that cost? And I wanted to ask Wade, are you taking everything orally?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. My cousin 18 months ago was diagnosed with stage 4 liver cancer, and he can't take anything orally, just he gets way too high and he can't really smoke, but he's been taking it suppository, and it's pretty incredible. And they just did like they tested all his tumors, they did x-rays, and in 3 months they haven't had any growth at all. And he's been just it's pretty incredible. And he was told he only had 6 months to live 18 months ago. And he came and actually stayed with me, and he's been just like taking so much oil, and he goes in a hyperbaric chamber, I think it's called, where with pressure. And it seems like the combination of these two, it's pretty incredible that he's still with us. Anyways, I just wanted to say that.
Right on, man.
Cheers. Yeah. Thanks, Thomas. Always good to share the like-minded stories. Listen, I wanted to introduce Ryan. Ryan's going to kind of give us a little lowdown. Ryan's kind of like how do I put it? Just like one of these younger gung-ho guys that you see yourself in, like his passion and his excitement about hash. I couldn't have my brand in a place like Michigan without Ryan or someone exactly like him, someone that has the passion, someone that's been like, I watched the hash churches, I studied what you guys are doing, I listened to every video, I've learned from my own mistakes, I went off and did my own mistakes and created this knowledge that, we need great growers and we need a variety of things to do a brand, but really without a guy like Ryan, the brand wouldn't be going anywhere fast. So why don't you introduce yourself, homie, and tell us about a little bit about you, like where you came from, how you got into this, and now a little bit about what we're doing together.
Yeah, my name is Ryan. I'm a hash maker in Southeast Michigan. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and I moved to Michigan. I've been up here on and off for 5 years now. So yeah, Marcus reached out last May, and we've been teaming up, bringing the Bubble Man brand here, and it's been a lot of fun. Lately we're working on some brick hash and some hash hits that we're about to bring to the market, and then we also have 2 flights of rosin pens, like 70, 90, 120 of 2 flavors of strawberry lemonade and Queen of Diamonds. And then we did some more full spectrum pens too.
Yeah, dude. Put you on the spot there, hey? Sometimes it's not so easy just jumping on the old hot seat at Hash Church and be like, all right, tell us about yourself, man.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to change it to just one person's screen when they're talking. I've actually forgotten this. You have a update for me, Thomas?
Yeah, in the top right, we're in the view.
Oh, view. Speaker. Thank you, brother. Look at that. Now it's you with the LED light. Appreciate that.
Cool.
Appreciate that. Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Thomas? I don't think you've ever been on Hash Church. People have obviously seen your show on my channel. But yeah, Thomas and I have been working together for a little while now. I don't know if it's been 6 months or even if it's almost a year. But yeah, he's got the Grandmaster LEDs, the UVC lights, the whole variety of insanity. Thomas is kind of like a mad scientist savant when it comes to producing and creating lights that if you tell him he can't do it, he will absolutely fucking do it.
Yeah, well, my team kind of gets mad at me that sometimes because, in just even the light that you're looking at, we redesigned it 3 different times, or when doing something, you have a completed product and then all of a sudden you see a better way of doing it. So I've been in the lighting business for 7.5 years. I've been growing indoors since 96, been growing outdoors since 94. It's a really big passion for me and to me. Like I got involved in this originally to make money, but then just obviously fell in love with the plant. We actually had like a really big breakthrough. Well, there's a couple things that I really wanted to talk about. I think the biggest breakthrough is the UVC and using it as a pesticide because, in all my years of growing, we've broken the rules by just using a little small amount of light with a small amount of wattage for a short period of time. And we've developed a way to be able to completely just eliminate the need for predator bugs and pesticides when you're to deal with thrips and other pests that we're still working on. So it's been really, really exciting. Another thing that's like just absolutely huge that's changing growing for everybody is under canopy lighting. And it's been highly debated for years. And I actually, 2 years ago had designed an inter canopy light where it kind of goes in the middle of your canopy and it's kind of like a low wattage. And then we just did not see really good data or anything. And then I saw other clients of ours using under canopy lighting and having stupid results. When I say stupid, we're talking 30 to 40% gains. And not only that, at the same time, eliminating all your bee buds and all the color differences. So it's pretty exciting. And a lot of people have been making this argument about, oh, it doesn't line up with the science. Well, the science of it is the light is actually going through the leaves and being caught. It's the only thing that makes sense because we've just seen incredible results. So that's one thing that's just we've just kind of finished developing too. And just kind of exciting seeing what's been happening with the because it's really changing the game, and just it's so hard. Like I've been seeing for some of the people, like depending on where you're producing. I know, well, Michigan, we've just set up shop in Michigan ourselves, and it's because it's so much cheaper to operate, and real estate is so much cheaper over there than California. Like when I was seeing the cost of what people are having to deal with and operating in California, it is insane. Like I thought we had it bad here in Canada. And like the California rent and just the cost of everything, it is insane.
Seriously. How it's so many of my friends that have, I mean, I'm sure Mojave and Wade have a bigger list, but just lots of people dropped off. They just were like, fuck, I can't fuck with this. This is absolutely impossible.
Yeah,
Damn.
like seeing people paying $37,000 a month rent at like in certain places, and these $20,000 bills. Like it just I would just, it would be so hard to operate. I just can only imagine just seeing and some of the red tape. Like Canada has some really disgustingly bad red tape, especially like, but it's gotten easier to do things. Like it's so much easier to become an
It
LP.
has.
Yeah, like 5 years ago, becoming an LP took like millions of dollars. Like you almost needed like $5 million liquid cash 5 years ago to do it.
You
Really?
did.
Yeah.
Absolutely did. We rented our facility. My partners rented the facility before they brought me onto the company, and I was like, I came and looked at the facility. It's 45,000 square feet, 3 stories. It's just gigantic building. I'm like, how much are you paying for rent? They're like, oh, it's like 60 grand. I'm like, $60,000 for rent? Then, because there was a cannabis shop right down the street from us called Cannabis, we figured, well, this is a no problem. Like we'll be able to get in all day long. We got licensing came fast from the government within reason, like 6 months fast. But the city of Delta decided that they were going to do a case by case study on each company that wanted to bring cannabis to their city, because they were convinced that what we were really going to do is take the cannabis out of the facility and go down to the high schools and sell it for $35 an eighth. This was the mentality of these people, and it cost us an enormous amount of money because they didn't give us the they're okay for us to put a cannabis company in that building for almost 2 years, paying $60,000 a month rent, if you can imagine, Thomas. How's that for a burn it to the ground? Like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, oh my God, I was so naive. I just thought, as long as I make cash, we should be okay. As long as every day I've just got the equipment operating and making hash, we should be okay. In the end, that company was not okay. They flailed it, fucked it right into bankruptcy, but it still exists. My new partners, we have no debt. We have, no equipment debt, no CRA debt, no partnership debt. The company is a unicorn in Canada for processing now. We still have the same facility. It's just on one floor of the 3 stories. All the equipment's paid off, and we're full up with, rosin presses from Sasquatch, 55 tons. We've got the Sambo Creek filtration electroplasmatic dry sifting unit. We have the Whistler 300, WT 300 washing equipment. We have a ton of, well, not a ton, but like 3 XL resonators with a walk-in freezer. So we have the abilities to get a lot of stuff done without those crucial mistakes that were made by early companies. And wow, did we ever see it a lot in Canada? And you got to think, like, that's people's money. That's not just like some dude like burning it to the ground because he's incompetent. That's like, it's an entire team of people, all from what I saw. And it's not like they were all terrible people. It just seemed like they were coming from corporate America or corporate North America, because they were all Canadians, and bringing all the things that they learned. The marketing people were like, we're going to bring all the things we learned at marketing school. It's like, I would try to tell them, you can't. It won't work that way. It won't come across as authentic. You actually you're going to have to start anew with your knowledge. This is an opportunity for you to pioneer something. You can take the little gems that you brought from your education, but what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to shift your perspective and apply something new and novel to how you bring this to the market. And I've seen little bits of it happen, but for the most part, there's highly regulated rules that say, you know, this is what your package can look like. You know, in America, it looks so much nicer, but in Canada, that's what you get. You know, this is a totally different product in Canada. Look at that. Can you imagine? Like, that is insane. People go into stores, they don't recognize the products at all. They're kind of like, so there's still, we're not under prohibition the same way as we were, but they're still stifling. They're still like, let's see what key, like, I swear they must have had a think tank of brilliant people, because they could not have accidentally fucked this up this bad. This absolutely has to be on purpose. I'm not a paranoid, delusional person. I'm just saying that these people, government officials and the people that are passing these regulations, really don't. Health Canada less than 2 years ago in Canada said, we still believe there's no medical factors, no medical aspects of cannabis in any way while interacting with the human body. Like, they made a statement, even though they have a medical platform all across, one of the only federal medical platforms in the whole world, you know, one of the first, and yet they still don't acknowledge it. So I don't know. I'm rambling. Sorry about that, guys. Probably need another dab.
Oh, go on.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say that, you know, that's like in California. California is like the 5th largest economy in the world. Agriculture is a huge component of the economy here. We have a serious heritage legacy with cannabis, you know, the worldwide story, and California dropped the ball. And it's almost like it's impossible to think they dropped the ball that much, you know, like, and I'm not a conspiracy person at all. But I think it is it's super fucking complicated, you know, and I do get that nobody really understood what to do. But I think your point about the leadership, that there was no, like, I have this, like, you can think a company like a car company or some invention. It starts with like the founder, it builds, it becomes bigger and bigger, and then it becomes a giant industry, and then maybe someone else takes it over, like the outside influence. Like, you could build a manufacturing company, and then 30 years later, you're super successful, and your new CEO is from insurance or entertainment or whatever, or the CFO. So you bring in this other guy. But we, as an industry, we brought in that guy from the beginning. As soon as we transitioned, all the leadership across the board was like, oh, we need business specialist guys. We need people who know how to do business. But none of them were ground up cannabis people. None of them understood cannabis. A lot of them made really bad decisions and influenced policy in a big way. And no one really predicted no one ever thought what would happen if prohibition didn't exist, and what is cannabis really worth? What's the real value of cannabis, not just to people as a medicine, but the commodity to the farmer, the manufacturer, the distributor? Nobody thought, like, what's a real number? And if that's the real number, then that's the number we're all headed towards. And if we're all headed towards that number, then how do we transition from where right now it's $3,000 a pound, but it should probably be $100 or $200 a pound, and you're paying $8 a square foot for cultivation facility? It's like, that's not right. The state shouldn't have allowed that, and then you're paying $500,000 for a license and spending $80,000 a month on rent. And like, the ag state should have like had the foresight to say, look, in order to transition out of prohibition, we got to be realistic with people about what their opportunities are. And they didn't,
because everyone wanted to transition out of prohibition and not have jail anymore, but nobody wanted to let that prohibition dollar go. You know, that prohibition dollar, the people came in, they were like, all right, we're going to legalize this and we're going to change everything. Oh, yep. Wait a minute, Bill. Let's not change the prohibition dollar. It used to make sense getting, you know, say $3,000 a pound, which is like 4,500 Canadian. That is like, we're growing it for like, you know, in the 90s, maybe 2,000, you know, 1,500. So the profit margin of weed from Canada to America was just astronomical. Now, it was that way because if you got caught, depending on the state, you were probably doing like a 5 or a 10. year sentence, depending on where you got caught. The higher the money amount, like if you're going down to Arkansas and getting 6,200, well, you're definitely doing the 10 if you get caught, like even with like a zip, let alone, 100 pounds. So it made sense in a sense, it didn't really, but it made sense in the sense that this horrific jail sentence was the reward, or the anti-reward, of making this enormous amount of money. They got rid of the jail sentence, and then suddenly they wanted to keep the same prices.
Right. The algorithm changed. And the funny thing is, the corporate guys who the first wave, they were chasing that prohibition dollar because they didn't come from ag. They weren't ag tech people. They weren't people who were ethnobotanists. They didn't really understand cannabis. So they were like, oh, fuck, man, there's a lot of money to be made. Even if it's $500 a pound, we're still making crazy money. And now the can costs more than what's inside the can.
Dude, how about even crazier? I'll step it up for you. When I go to cannabis stores and I try to explain to everyone, because all the corporate people want the same thing. They're like, we need to stabilize and shelf ready these products. I'm like, oh, you want us to take a volatile compounds and stabilize them for the shelf. All right, well, I don't know a ton about a ton, but that sounds very difficult. That's what they want to do. They want to stabilize it. Then what do? You go to the stores, and the only thing that is being made cold are 10 milligram shots of distillate nano-emulsified into a beverage in a little can sitting in the fridge. And I'm like looking at all the hash at room temperature. I'm looking at all the weed. I'm trying to explain to them that all of your volatile compounds, they're boiling right now at room temperature, and oh yeah, the vault smells amazing. I'm like, no, and the companies are so new that they've gone so big so fast that they're not growing exceptional cannabis yet. Some are doing a great job, but many are not. So already you have the disadvantage of the volatile organic compounds are already in smaller amounts than they would have been had they been grown more properly by better people under better conditions with better cultivars. And now they're boiling those off. It's like, dude, it's only 1.5% as it is. By the time the guy gets it and it's dry and the terpenes and all these beautiful volatiles have boiled off, it's not the same experience. And that's where you get people being a little bit disgruntled with their purchase. It's come a long way in Canada, I will say. There's a lot more companies that are sort of on the par for, producing nice things. People from the black and gray market that have transitioned over and understand that growing smaller amounts is probably a better idea than trying to grow, 1 million square feet when the only thing you've ever grown is fucking chickpeas.
We were talking about just about government screwing things up. It's crazy to see what's happening in Germany right now. Like, boy, if they have just really screwed everything up, where I think they're basically limiting people to only be able to do like 55 light shows. And I forget how many people they can do it for. So then you have to extend groups. We've been talking with multiple people out there, and it just sounds like such a headache and just such a bad idea, a bunch of real bad ideas that aren't going to be sustainable.
Who would have thought that the Germans would come up with a bureaucratic nightmare for cannabis? Like, I would have never thought.
So weird. It's like a weird, it's like a Spain weird hash. It's like a club membership based thing.
That's what they want to do in Germany. Exactly.
A quota based perk patient. It's impossible for any businesses to make money, really. But they're like, I think the logic was like, well, we'll figure out a way for you guys to smoke weed, but no one gets to make money off it yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And
they figured it out. They figured it out to make it be like, if you do the numbers, and I can't remember the exact numbers, it's like 5 keys a month or something, or some small amount. If you do the math, you're allowed to have a certain amount of members, 200 members or something. They're allowed to buy a maximum amount of cannabis twice a month. And if you do the max numbers and all of those guys are buying, then it's like, okay, this is an okay little business. But the problem is unless you're producing great cannabis, they're going to be a part of other groups. They're going to get cannabis from a multitude of places. It'll dilute your sales. You won't be selling 100%, and your number's already small. It seems like, and then they're all investing in their own grows, which from, you know, the Grandmaster LED perspective is like, woohoo! Like, instead of just like a bunch of big companies coming in, it's literally going to be like, I think they put the cap at 10,000, and I could be wrong, but I thought I heard when we were in Berlin that they're going to allow 10,000 private clubs throughout Germany.
Yeah,
To be growing their own weed, processing their own hash, and selling it to their own private members. That's a lot of work. I don't think 10,000 people are going to find success in that.
Yeah.
All right, I want you all taking a dab right now, and I want Brian to tell me about what his best hash dash rosin is that he's growing and smoking right now. Because I miss your deep radio voice describing in detail rosins and hashes. I do, man. I miss that.
I grabbed a couple just in case we were talking about that kind of thing. Yeah, I got
Awesome.
This is rosin form, but this is some lime peels, I'm calling it. And my friend, Jacob Hash friend, bred this.
Oh, yeah.
I shared some breeding technique in my last year out in Humboldt, which was 8 years ago. We worked together in the field, and he sent me some seeds he made a couple years back. And this was a lemon peel by lemon peel again on Ghost Train Banana Sherbet by Z-Face. That like really creative he made, and it's super duper loud. Like, can't wait to share it with him back. But anyway, there's a look. It's hard to smell through the computer, but it's definitely like you stepped on some like gassy lime peels, and it's right in your face, and the taste is almost louder than the smell on this one. Like, the translation is almost overboard out of your ears on the taste, even from the smell. So I'm liking this one. It's got a really good sativa kick too in that profile. The lemon G on the I-95 shines in this one.
Oh, yeah, dude. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so I'm liking that one. I stick to my gas mask heavy, and then I just did finish while breeding and working with my new 207 headband. Kind of threw back to the old East Coast headband clone I came into when I was first moving back here. So I'm kind of on the gas ticket as usual, but working with some. I got a whole list of interesting new ones coming up to talk about when the time's right, but I'm excited.
I want to hear about every one of them for sure. Once you're holding the jar in your hand.
Well, I got a few new ones I'm turning. I got a strawberry headband I made from my strawberry Midas into the headband clone I call Strawberry Headband. And I crossed that into the gas mask for a strawberry gas mask. I also am like checking phenos outside on these projects right now and seeing which ones shine, which ones keep or make it. And I've got the strawberry headband lines into some different things because it just shined so well outside last year is actually most of that reason. And I did a sour banana sherbet on the strawberry headband for like a straw nana band type of thing, like a contemporary straw nana. I got that citrus smoothie, which is that's what the lime peels. I named the pheno, but it's actually his creation. It's called citrus smoothie. Jacob, the hash creation. So I'm tying that in like a mail in that shine the same lemon G profile on me, like the lemon peel profile. So I'm working those out in the yard. I seem to see, like, we talked about this, I think, a few years ago, but I see a really good resistance kick on the lemon or the limonene terpene out into Maine. As far as like health carry through the season. But yeah, so I got some different interesting gas mask on GMO is a new one that I'm really working with, calling Gasmo. Yeah, so that one popped up. One that Skunk Man would like, Sam would like. I got like a really skunky pheno on that one, and one that leaned more towards the GMO. Both of them one of them dumps hash. I can only imagine the other pheno next time we wash it will do the same. But yeah, I could go on and on and on. There's all kinds of that love for the strain work, and Just trying to,
Dude, I just love how you articulate it, and you can just tell and hear the passion in it, and you can hear the like, this guy has not only grown and touched and like experienced the expression of this plant, he's also like processed it and dabbed it out on all levels, and you're able to articulate that in a really good way, man. I'm telling you, I like that.
I love it. Thank you.
Brian, can I ask you about the East Coast headband? Because
Sure.
I have a kind of strange relationship with headband. Just real quick, my good friend, I think he's known on the social media as Manny in the whole story of Sour Diesel. He was the guy who put the seed in the ground, but in the pot. He wasn't it's a long story, but he's a close friend of mine. And when he came out to the West Coast in the late 90s, I did a swap with him with Sour Diesel and Kush before it was called OG. So we did a trade, and I gave the OG guys the sour for the first time, and I gave the sour guys the OG for the first time. And long story, crazy story short, but when he was up in the Bay Area, 707, right? First he was up in Mendo area, but when he was in Sonoma, I told him I suggested not calling the OG.
Okay.
Calling it Kush, because it was a weird time in the scene, Not that many people had that cut at the time, and it was just a little bit volatile and just the weird money element around it. Anyway, he called it headband.
Okay.
And that's where the 707 headband came from. And the whole story was that back in the East Coast, when he was a kid in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, they used to use the term headband as a descriptor for like a certain effect, which we've all had, that rubber band coming off your head.
Right.
But so the question I had to him, and I've asked this of other people who were on that scene back in the day, is was there ever a cut ever called headband that survived through that transition? Because from what I know, everything that's called headband today came from that renaming of OG. He was selling OG and sour at the same time, and some of it was called headband, and some of it was seeded, and some of it was just OG, and it was just sour. So I've always been trying to trace, like, if anyone can have an origin of an original East Coast headband cut that predates like 99, 2000 era, it's a great part of the narrative around Kim Dog and OG and stuff.
I love the story. Yeah, those are great pieces you're throwing in right there. That's the history. I think none of it's it's written down, but none of it's locked in, written into stone, where a lot of pieces move with the OG story and the Sour Diesel story. I only really know like what my history line with it is, and definitely raised up on that real ECSD cut that I've heard sourced back to the Albany, called such things. This headband, when I was out west, I lived in NorCal and did this medical work for 11 years. So I got to touch some really good genetics out there. And I did work through a batch of Kushes to get to that true OG cut, it was called, out of Southern Humboldt circulation from Oaksterdam or Oakland area. And I really love that one. And I would say, as far as the headband out west, I tried the 707 and maybe another Lumpicka or something, few of them that, like, my glassblower friends up in Arcata were in love with that 707, and a couple of variations that were more Kush sided out there that I noticed, definitely more OG sided. And then when I moved back here, I just had a friend kind of bless me with some plants when I stepped in doing the first light dap. And there was a super lemon haze cut that was amazing. And then there was this headband cut just reported to me as it moved through the lines. People shared it. It was definitely like East Coast heavy headband cut that some people reported to be possibly what's termed or original diesel or the day wrecker. That's been thrown in the mix with it, which it might be that same synonymous, same cut. And then what I noticed, part of the story as well, when I first went out west myself in 06, 07, I had a friend from out east doing work out there that grabbed a cutting from Vermont. We were in Maine, but he called it all day. He called it East Coast Sour Diesel. And it was not the Albany cut that I was used to, but it was so dank, like peanut butter, fudgy, thick, like not your mass super skunk as much sided. It was more thick, like a Kush thickness to it versus, you know, the ECSD. And that was sour diesel to him, East Coast sour diesel. But then I heard other people out there when I was working in the Santa Rosa Sonoma area with actually a market, like a farmer's market and such. Some people had some clones and some medicine or some flour of it. And some people termed it the mistress cut. I don't know if you've heard that one thrown around out there, like the sour diesel you cheat on your other sour diesel with.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
There could be another story attached to the mistress cut, but that's maybe getting a little too personal.
I don't know. Yeah.
No, but that's a really interesting story because I think so. The first time I showed these guys the OG around 98, 99, they took a look at it and go, "That's the diesel. Where'd you get diesel?" And I'm like, and these are the sour diesel guys. I'm like, "You mean sour diesel?" Like, no, diesel. Because sour diesel is just Kim.
Right.
Sour diesel is just sour Kim. And then they just changed it to diesel because diesel was a popular,
So did you hear this story? You'd be one I think I can ask about because you have some of this folklore. The story my friends that circulated around the first early cuttings, like 99, 2000, even 2001 that came around for us back then. Years later, when I came back, a friend of mine said that he had heard the sour diesel story coming out of this, the East Coast side, actually pertaining more to that. It was diesel was like a term, like you're saying, that referred to like strength, power. It was, that powerhouse. Right. Yeah. So, and then what I heard is the sour got flipped onto it because if you had that real cut of that diesel, then other crews were sour over it. Have you heard that one a lot?
Well, that's part of it.
Joe.
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah,
that's AJ, right?
Yeah, it's soured relationships. But it was originally the first seeds were from Kim Dog, and it's unknown male for two generations basically. So the whole mass super skunk side, nobody really knows. Okay. But basically the seeds were, as far as I remember, and my memory fades, man. It was our Kim on the seed pack on the little film box, and then they put the S in front of our Kim, and then it was sour Kim, and then once it because it was Kim Dog, and then once it hit the market, when people started purchasing it, it was like, oh, it sells. We'll sell it as sour diesel because diesel is like chronic. It's like saying fire.
It's like piff or diesel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
I was waiting for the piff to get mentioned.
Piff.
I haven't worked with any of that one in a while. Any variation.
And I just
heard it was a nice little download on the stories. Go ahead, Mojave.
Is it really supposed to be piff? Is just supposed to be purple haze? I saw this on some video that the piff, they called it the piff because the Dominican guys that were selling haze were calling it purple. It was NL5 haze, but they were calling it purple haze because haze and purple haze just were attached. And the guys who were hearing it didn't get the accent right. I don't know if that's just an internet story, but I've always wondered where did the word piff come from?
I'd like to know the same.
Got to get those Miami guys in here.
We called it haze back in the day, and then piff came later for me, actually, after I moved back even 5 years ago. So
it was always haze for us up in Manitoba. It was that's what it was. 18 plus week flower,
right?
Big monster plants, little tiny buds. I was so lucky to truly that as much of a commercial grower as my mentor Ron Hickey was, because he was just all about like building these like secret rows and houses all across. He was also one that would be like, let's just grow this. It's 20 weeks of flowering. And just like people would be like, whoa, what are you talking about, Ron? Like we could hammer off like 3 crops. Like we can't do that. It's like, he'd be like, oh, we're doing it. And that weed was just so spectacular to have that in my history of that, people would come into the room and they'd be like, they'd think it was like perfume, like literally just on their tongues, in their mouths, down their throats. Like, what is that perfumey smell? But it's the haze. And in fact, this is an amazing thing because my wife is not a huge proponent of cannabis. Obviously, she has an appreciation for the fact that it's been funding our life for the last 35 years. And she has her own relationships with wearing hemp and CBD and whatnot. But yeah, just not overly a huge cannabis proponent. But when my first son was born and we named him Tosh, she suggested that we use the name Hayes for his middle name, which in fact is his name. He's Tosh Hayes. And I just thought that was such a cool thing. And I even asked her later, I was like, what made you do that? Like, what made you say that? And she's like, you would always just get so excited about the Hayes. I wanted to transfer a little bit of that over to our son. I was like, that's amazing. The Hayes, it's the Hayes. That's how excited we would be. You guys know, I'm sure you were the same way.
My wife did the exact same thing with my son. It's so weird you said that, man, because she suggests my son's middle name is Sage. and my
awesome.
wife is not a smoker, and she it didn't even really she doesn't even follow the whole heritage of me as a breeder and stuff like that. It's not a big part of our lives and our narrative. She's like, well, what about Sage? Isn't that a cool? I'm like, honey, you realize that it's kind of weird for me. It's like, just do that. She's like, yeah, but it's a cool name. I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's a really cool name. Let's do it.
I mean, dude, listen, that is unbelievable because you bred both of those sages.
Yeah, that's right, man. I'm a sage breeder. That's right.
You are the sage breeder on multiple fronts. That is super cool. Shout out to the wives and how cool they are.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it without them. That is for sure. Couldn't do it without them. That is for sure. Well, man, what a nice chill out. It's been about an hour so far. I'm good for a little bit more and puff some bowls. I'm missing Sam. I'm hoping that everything's okay with him and that maybe just maybe had some family or something else going on that he couldn't make it today. But it's good to hear from each and every one of you. What's that?
I thought Rob was just out there for his birthday.
Right. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
As they're living the birthday life. I wish I could go and travel around for people's birthdays. Rob is the consummate traveler. Always the traveler.
Yep.
Kept it consistent too. Like, did not slow down as he got older. He's just like, I'll just keep visiting countries.
Yeah.
Wow. I'll never forget really that it kind of blew my mind that he had this apartment that he didn't really live in, but it just held like boxes of all of his stuff. I was always just like, dude, that is neat. That's wild. You're just like, and I can't count the amount of times that I would go visit him at that apartment, the old one on the Tollstraat there. And he would have just gotten back from somewhere. So we'd have all these crazy like tools from, harvesting hemp in Vietnam and like cloths and beads and like just going through Rob's stuff with Rob was one of my coolest memories of hanging out and getting to know Rob. You really get to know that guy when you let him go through the stuff that he's collected around the world and sort of express his passion that he has for the weaves and the culture and once again, I just have, I'm attracted to passion. I really have an attraction to passion. It doesn't even have to be passionate about something that I personally love. If it's palpable and the person is just truly authentic in their passion for the thing they're sharing with you, it's a pretty lovely experience. I think if more people put their phones down, in fact, and hung out with people, just next to each other rather than sorry, what were you saying here? Oh, did you see this? You got to check this out. It's like, I don't want to check that out. I want to relax and connect and puff some dabs. Indeed. Thomas, are you going to tell us about the UVC lights a little bit? I feel like we should probably talk about that a little bit.
Sure. You know what? I think I can actually.
Let me start it off. You do what you're going to do. What I'll start off is how Thomas I've known for a long time. He's Grandmaster LED. He's got a popular YouTube channel. He's lots of traction. He's always been doing stuff. But it was only about a year ago he was reaching out to me on Instagram, which is a terrible way to reach out to me for anyone that wants to know. It's much easier to just hit me up on my BC Bubbleman at iCloud.com. You can find it almost in all my social medias. But he hit me up on Instagram, and I get so many messages on there. I'm not always quick, and he had sent me maybe 3 or 4 messages, and I hadn't gotten back to him. He was like, I have something. The messages were like, I have something amazing. You got to check this out. It's crazy. Blah 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 blah. I was like, oh, I got to get back to this guy. I got to get back to this guy. Lose the messages in the list. Finally, get back to him, and he's like, I got this light that like kills bugs, and I'm like, okay, dude, like, sure you do. And he starts telling me about this UVC light. Listen, he got me hooked. I will admit, I had to go and photograph the garden that he showed, which was full of, I think the first one he showed was full of thrips. And as a grower, I haven't been growing every day for the last 35 years, but I started growing almost 35 years ago, and I've grown some crops, and I know what it looks like when you get bugs. And I know how devastating it is when the plants look the way they looked when he showed the crop with the thrips. And so he showed a crop, the same crop later. I don't know if it was 30 or 40 days later. This was when he really first got the light and didn't understand. There's still a lot to learn about this light, a lot. But he was using it for very, very short intervals. It was like 5 minutes a day on. And they're just little 5-watt strip lights that point up under the canopy. And they disrupt these bugs in a big way. What were the other ones? The aphids. They were like literally running away. Go ahead, Thomas.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, can you spotlight or pin my video here, and I'll hit play.
Yeah, let me see how I can do that. Spotlight for everyone. There we go.
So this is actually like thrips in my own medical garden on the very first day that I was testing them out myself. What's like really crazy about this is, well, before I'd even started this, we had already done tests and been totally successful. So we were taking basically a tent, taking just like one plant and introducing spider mites. We started off, our very first tests were spider mites, where we're introducing 5 to 7 mites. And within 7 days, we're completely beating them. Like, I'm talking, like, at this point, I thought, okay, I can beat spider mites. And we're also beating thrips. So this was the first, but it was only like on an individual plant with like 1 or 2 thrips or with only like 5 or 7 mites. So this was the first thing where we actually have an actual thrip infestation. And you can see how they're just like bars that go underneath your canopy. They're only 5 watts each. And we were only doing 5-minute, just trying to think, right? No, at this point we were only doing, that's right, 5-minute treatment. So this is actually going to jump 10 days later of doing 5-minute treatments, and 7 or 3 days before this footage, like, we have about 4 or 15 hours worth of footage crammed into about 15 minutes here. But 3 days before this, I cleaned the bottoms up and I moved the lights up, and I couldn't really find any thrips or thrip damage at that point. And so right before I took this footage, I had found thrips in the corner. It's going to show it in a second. In the one area where I didn't strip the leaves, like I totally forgot to strip the leaves. And it's like the one area where the light's not treating. So it was pretty incredible. This was on at this point, like, basically the footage is just trying to show, like, you can't hide the damage that thrips do. It has like almost like a slug paste that goes everywhere. And this is where, this is right where I found him. And you can see, I moved the light into the corner right before I'd taken the footage, but you could see they went right into the corner. And as the crop went on, I thought, like, I considered it 97 to 98% protection, because we couldn't kill them or beat them at 5 minutes a day, but you couldn't see a trace of any damage in the top 30 plus inches, which to me was beating them. Because you can't normally beat them, and they will just spread like just insanely fast. So anyways, we started then wanting to use UV to stress out the plant, because UVA and UVB or UVA is commonly used to like enhance THC and terpenes, and then UVB, there's a lot of evidence that it works a lot better. So then we started, UVC has a much higher efficacy. So we started doing 2 15-minute treatments, and 6 days later, the thrips were completely gone from the room. completely just, you could not find a thrip. We flew Matthew Gates out from California. He's like a IPM specialist, just to see if he could find any. And it was just kind of mind blowing. We accidentally,
Dude, I came out there with my macro fucking lens and photographed that crop looking for thrips or any type of bugs. I have the macro photographs. There's not a bug. There's no bug shit. There's no sign of any bugs, which was the thing that caught my attention. That was my full circle.
yeah, and it was just kind of mind blowing to kind of see that. Well, we didn't even end up beating them until like the 6th week, and when we were trying to enhance THC. So at this point right now, and this is another shipping container I have where I had 3 tents, and there was another lab that participated with this, and then someone else in Michigan and someone else in Oregon, where we're and at this point, when I was developing this, there was all different types of UVC diodes. They all have different types of efficacy. They all have kind of different types of wavelengths. So we were trying to determine what is going to be the most effective. And so we were also using different diode counts, and we were running different milliamps through the diodes, just kind of developing it. And at the same time, this is when we were testing spider mites. And at the same time, this is when we're taking, like on our very first test, we're taking 5 to 7 spider mites. Now we're taking hundreds of spider mites, and with lima bean leaves that have eggs, and letting them establish for hours. While these ones, what you're looking at right now, this leaf was clean 12 hours ago. So they've had 12 hours to, like, what you can see the damage of what they've done in 12 hours, and it's pretty mind blowing what they can do.
It hurts my soul.
Yeah. So then all the footage that you're seeing, they had 36 hours to establish. Like, well, this is at the 12-hour mark, but with this treatment, before we actually started using the light, they had 36 hours to establish, and we started doing 10-minute treatments. And like, we're about to do a whole bunch of more testing on spider mites, but it's still pretty incredible. So this is 7 days later. So you can remember what they did to those leaves in the first 12 hours, and we can come to the very top leaf, and it's totally clean. And like, they're still alive on the plant, but the simple fact that after after they get treated, they get suppressed and they just start walking around almost aimlessly. You can see the adults they're on the plant, but a lot of them are just kind of sitting there. They're not setting up shop what they normally do. It screws with their DNA and their RNA. Like I said, we're working with a university that is assisting with the white paper, so we don't have all the science on it yet, but we do know that it totally disrupts them. Without question, it's slowing the spread down by 90 to 95%. But that's not to say that when with 2 15-minute treatments that we have a chance to still potentially beat them, because we couldn't, like, 10 minutes treatments could not thrip, like we couldn't beat thrips with with a 10-minute treatment, but 2 15-minute treatments, we absolutely can beat them, where they are completely gone, eradicated. And right behind here, you can see these are kale plants that have hundreds of regular aphids, and it's within a couple days, you can see that there's like a trail of them leaving and dying. And it has a very high efficacy on aphids. Within 14 days, over 90% of them are dead on the plant, just right in their tracks, breaking down. So
I will say the first crop that he showed, which was that death bubba with the thrips, I went there, I photographed it. Then he harvested it, and we ran it through bubble bags in my living room, because I just wanted to see. To me, it didn't seem possible that a plant could get that bad of an infestation and not be drastically affected in its yield and or quality and caliber of resin. And it came out like 5-star resin. And I think we got about 22 or 23%. So the yield was there, the quality was there. It kind of blew my mind, I'm not gonna lie. And that was really sort of the nudge I needed to be like, you know what, I just remember being a young grower and listen, from the perspective of like even food production, peppers and all these other different things, like this is pretty insane when you think about it. Now, obviously, I have always concerns about disruption of DNA and RNA, and I wouldn't want to be in the room while this thing is on. Thomas suggests that you're not in the room while it's on, because
Yeah.
it is UVC.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Like this can cause cancer. It's just a fact. So you absolutely don't want to be anywhere near this. And you want to use it in the middle of the darkness. And that's where, well, we came across an article that kind of led to everything and how everything developed. But bugs are attracted to light in the middle of darkness. And even though UV 5 watts might to our human eye doesn't look like very much, and it's not enough to disrupt the plant sleeping, but it's a lot to an insect, and it's enough for them to be kind of like attracted in. And what's really exciting here is what we haven't discussed yet is we had a timer failure that led to another really incredible discovery. Well, we have, like I already brought up, that it's commonly known that people use UVA to enhance THC and terpenes, which UVA is basically like a blue. It's 315 nanometer to 400 nanometer wavelength. And going back almost 7 years ago, I saw a whole bunch of people that participated when they're going and using UVA against UVB. UVB is 280 to 315. And we saw like the UVA, there was almost no gain. But the UVB, there was a huge gain. So we knew with UVC, with like 100 nanometer to 280 nanometer, that there is, it's going to have the highest efficacy for hurting or doing damage. So anyways, we had a timer fail and came in the room, and every part of the plant was completely fucked. So that's when we learned that the light can be systemically emitted into the plant. So that is something that we're going to be playing with. It was also really good that this actually happened, because we realized, like, hey, oh my goodness, if someone has a timer failure, they could kill their crop with these lights. So we were able to develop our driver, the MCU and the driver, so it can only run for 15 minutes at a time. But anyways, I don't really have too much more than that on it. It's a simple fact that we're developing it. We have a utility patent too on how it mounts. And I believe in 2 years from now, anybody that's doing commercial growing will be using it, or like a knockoff of it, because it breaks the rules of growing. It's also the very first EPA certified pesticide light in the United States.
Thomas, can I ask you a question about how is it drawing, because you said a small amount of light to attract insects, so is it drawing the plants to the UV, and then the UV is having the effect?
Well, it definitely draws it to them, and then it's screwing them up. But like, we were confused by the science when we absolutely eradicated them. Like the first time, like when I thought that it was, stopping them from being able to reproduce initially. So I was thinking, okay, it's taken us 5 or 6 weeks to get to this point, and now all of a sudden they're gone. But then, and here's another thing: in the very first test, we were also moving the lights up to get it as close as possible to anywhere where it was infected. Where on the following crop, we realized we didn't have to even move the lights up. We just ran it for those 2 15-minute cycles, and it's like they were gone. So I definitely think that they are attracted to it. I can't say just all the science behind it, but all I can say is that 100% eradicates thrips. And I actually believe that spider mites, it's possible. Well, we already have 90 to 95% protection with spider mites, but I think if 2 15-minute treatments could have a similar effect on as it is to thrips. And thrips and spider mites are what I would consider the 2 biggest pests in cannabis. Obviously, there's a lot of fungus gnats and aphids, and obviously root aphids are another kind of level, and broad mites and rusted mites. But I actually believe it would be very effective against broad mites and rusted mites. The problem with root aphids is they can stay their whole life in the soil, even if they're a full adult.
I like the idea that as a preventative, for sure, there's going to be people initially that are like, I got an infestation, I'm going to go out and get these lights and blast it hard. I like it more as just have them in your room. They're 5 minutes twice a day. They're just preventative. Like you said, Thomas, it's not like you're going to get 20,000 spider mites at once. It's going to be like a few. And if you've got that,
Yeah. It also I saw someone in the comments asked about mold, and it will factually kill mildew. So like you could put it right in front of mildew and it will kill it, but it's not going to kill or solve a mildew problem. Like a mildew problem is like if you're for example, if your VPD is totally way off, the biggest reason why people get mildew, in my opinion, is in the nighttime, the cycle, it gets too cold with your humidity that gets too high and you get a dew point, and that's like how it can't fix, or it's not going to solve something like that. But like I said, it definitely is going to fight and help microbials too. It's kind of like the ultimate, well, like it works to enhance THC and terpenes, it fights mold, and it fights bugs. And for such a low wattage, and let's be realistic, even using 10 watts for 30 minutes a day is not going to it's not going to change anybody's bill basically per light.
Yeah, they're tiny little dodgers. I'm always interested in I mean, obviously my all-time favorite is outdoor regenerative organic. Like that's my favorite. But I do love the fact that like I've even grown some incredible cannabis like just indoors, just with food that I bought at the store. I mean, it was an organic. I think I used like, what was that shit called? Earth juice, I think was something I used like 25 years ago or something. Just smelled like fish emulsions and other like death tea. Open that shit up and someone was like, oh my God, did someone die in here? It's like, no, man, it's my earth juice. Gotta put a little bit of, oh shit, I got some on my hand. Oh my God, that's gonna smell for a while.
Like concentrated, like really strong.
Yeah, it was super concentrated. It would come out like a little, did not pour very well, that earth juice, especially if it aged for any amount of time. But what I was meaning was I still appreciate cannabis expressed in all these different ways. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of cannabis that's been sprayed by deadly chemicals because I am going to vaporize the materials and inhale them into my lungs. So, you know, organic is definitely, it's crazy that we have to use a word for just normal. This is just normal. Like, no, it's organic. Organic, that sounds expensive. It's like, no, it can't be. Like, it has to be more expensive to buy chemicals and spray them all over your plant than to not put chemicals on your plant. It has to be. I don't know what kind of fucking crazy world we're living in, the bizarro world that Mojave was talking about earlier, where they just subsidize things so that it makes no sense in the economy. Because clearly,
do you see
that?
The vape pen scandal here in California over the last couple months with the
Remind me.
Oh man, well, the LA Times went and pulled products off the shelf at a few dispensaries and had them tested by a far more comprehensive lab than the state mandated labs, and found they were filled with things that are banned in the US, not just banned for cannabis, but banned in the entire US. They had some stuff that was in the single-use potential harm realm, you know, just for irritants and all that stuff. And paclobutrazol, which has nothing to do with fighting off it's not going to kill your crop. It's just about rock hard nugs. So it was still everywhere. And basically what it comes down to is, and the whole California supply chain is fucked. And there's like illicit shit that makes it in and it gets all flopped around. But the crazy part is now they're realizing that out of the 3 big distillate manufacturers in the state, you could have as many as 80 farms contributing to one vape pen because they're literally dumping it all in the big vat. And so if 1 out of the 80 farms is a dirty player, which there were, and there probably were more than 1 out of the 80, but just the idea that we've gotten to this point where it's this big, giant, you know, corn syrup world that we live in, you know, high fructose corn syrup that came from how many different cornfields, and the fact that there's still the greed element is a big part of it, and failing farms and all the problems, and everyone's like, oh, I got to make money. But the reality is, you know, and the sad part was, you know, the DCC had just done a $5 million campaign to show, DC is the Department of Cannabis Control, used tax money collected from cannabis revenue to do a $5 million campaign to show people that buying cannabis was safe. You could walk into a dispensary and just like we test it and all this stuff. And then they test it and, you know, it exposed the dirty supply chain. It also exposed that the labs aren't necessarily testing as much as they should. It exposed that some labs give you a pass. You know, some labs will say like, you know, hey, we'll give you a pass, you know, shop with us and we give you the highest THC numbers and we also pass your, you know, so the whole industry is all fucked. And it's kind of the fast food side of it. It's not the sun-grown, you know, family farm boutique organic thing. It's the big commercial failed farm trim market, you know, where people are selling $5 or $10 pounds of trim or moldy weed or whatever and turning it into distillate and isolate. And now, you know, we've got a huge vape and gummy and, you know, edible market, and it's just it's been exposed. So now shops are like going through like, you know, a lot of customers are showing up saying, hey, is this safe? So some shops have taken it on to actually test their own products with the expanded panel that the state doesn't mandate, because we now know that there's things in there that they're not even testing for. And it's just far out.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So anyway, so all these years later, you know, working in cannabis, it's still a mess. And there's still a lot of people, you know, that came into this industry to make money. And the state hasn't managed the transition well. But this vape pen thing was really a big story. You can look it up. It's a LA Times piece and it's got a lot of traction.
This is why I need Hash Church in my life, because I would not have been exposed to this otherwise. And I'm always happy to hear about things like this and make sure that, you know, we're going deeper with our own hardware for the brand. Like, make sure that you're picking and choosing the right things. Obviously, we're already on the conscious side of things in the sense that we're not using moldy material, we're not using chemically sprayed material, and we're not making distillate. We're making live hash rosin, which is, yeah, it's so crazy how greed is such a crazy factor that it turns into these monster scandals. It's like people don't start out evil. They just kind of like one step at a time as they get into a deeper hole and they need to be pulled out. It's like, wow, I could just sell all this moldy herb to the lab and we could turn it into distillate and then we could put it in with terpenes, botanical terpenes that also have contaminations. You know, I think when Horatio bought his D-limonene, the contaminant was called citrus oil, and it made up 5% of what was in that 5-gallon drum. It was like a full liter of just like orange, strange shit that he pulled out of a clear liquid, which I think you might have helped him with, Dr. Mark, if I do so remember.
Yeah, I did. Oh my God, man, it's a shit show. What you know, it's hard to even know where to begin. I think you have to begin at least, and you know, we haven't been on Hash Church too much since the Farm Bill, right? So it's just, it was never intended. I think when they signed the Farm Bill, I think they got snookered on seeds, oil, and rope, right? I mean, I don't even think they contemplated CBD, because CBD at the time had just gotten its approval as the active ingredient for Epidiolex. So there was no, and yeah, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act prohibits the use of FDA-approved active ingredient in food, feed, or cosmetics. So basically, that means the whole CBD industry, as it exists, was never contemplated, because they're basically in violation of federal law. It's interesting because if you read that law, it basically says for interstate commerce. So I guess as long as you keep within a state, I guess it's okay. But that's where it kind of started, Marcus, really. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, this vape pen thing is the fact that you can chemically convert CBD into THC at about 1/10 the cost of, yeah, and Mojave will tell you too. It depends on what your economics and your supply chain are. But when CBD has cratered to $250 a kilogram, it only adds a little bit of cost to now convert that into Delta 9. So the people who were originally converting it were converting it into Delta 8. And that's, you see all these Delta 8 products really proliferate for the most part in states where there isn't, good cannabis products. Now, California, again, is a notable exception. And so there's a lawsuit between several dispensaries in the Los Angeles area and these hemp manufacturers who are basically making $8 disposable vape pens that, you know, I don't know. It really depends on like what your cost of production are. But whatever the cost of production is, the hemp guys are a whole lot cheaper because they don't have the regulation and they have a much larger addressable market as soon as they could sell on the internet. 2 clicks after saying you're 21 years old, they're asking you for your credit card information. So, I mean, how do you compete and how do you expect a population of people to go to the dispensary and buy stuff at the dispensary when they could get stuff online or at a gas station a whole lot cheaper? Yeah, a lot of these places you could still go to jail for smoking weed, but on the way to jail, you could stop at the gas station and get yourself a Delta 8 pen or, some gummies. And now that they're in gummies and beverages, Mark, like beverages is huge. What Minnesota did, so there's just a patchwork of regulation down here in the States. And what Minnesota did is the liquor people who sell alcohol in Minnesota saw this THC beverage thing coming, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, liquor stores in Minnesota could sell 10 milligram CBD, cans of seltzer and fruity soda and shit like that. And that just opened up this huge market because basically, let's face it, we are a commodity. In a commodity, it's the race to the bottom. So you need to reduce your production costs at all wherever you can. And in reduction of production costs, yeah, at the end of the day, why am I going to spend 10 times the amount of money to make that 10 milligrams of THC when I could chemically convert that from cheap ass CBD? So in my building, I'm bringing in CBD, right, which has been made legal because of the Farm Bill. And now I'm chemically converting that on what people really want, not CBD, THC, right? And the converters have gotten sophisticated enough. So their chemistry at first was, their chemistry game wasn't as good as it should be. And they were basically dumping everything into Delta 8, which is basically the thermodynamic product. So Delta 8 is not made by the plant. Delta 8 is a degradation product, right? Plant only makes Delta 9 configured cannabinoids, but the Delta 8 that's there is usually just in trace amounts, and usually I think it's just a artifact of the measurement itself. So in that sampling of the process, you're actually converting some to Delta 8. There's no Delta 8 in the plant. There's no Delta 8 made in that biochemical pathway, only Delta 9. But like Delta 8 is not mentioned in the Farm Bill. So it created this loophole for people to say, okay, as long as I convert my CBD into Delta 8, people get high. They don't give a shit. They can just put some SpongeBob kind of cartoon character on some label. And next thing you know, gummies, vape pens, soda pop, all that shit will be sold and not at a dispensary and not the kind of products that you guys like Marcus and, quality growers and quality single sourced hash. This is just THC, the molecule, in some fruity drink or some fruity candy that kids can eat and sneak while they're in high school. And yeah, I think it's a real big problem. And it's probably only possible because of prohibition itself that this problem actually exists. It wouldn't exist if people had access to good quality weed. They wouldn't need Delta 8 and HHCP and THCP and acetate. There's been a lot of people going to the hospital because of THC acetate that's not very clean. And I guess what they now found is that when you heat up THC acetate, it converts into something called ketene, which is something you don't want to be breathing into your lungs. But yeah, all artificially made because of prohibition. I'll stop there.
You know, it's crazy. I have some friends out in North Carolina, and they're super conscious. Like, they grow organically, they process everything themselves, they do live hash rosin, but they're in that world. They don't do the Delta 8. They're just literally making they're using that weakness in the farm bill and exploiting it to get
create cheap THC.
Yeah, well, exactly. With live hash rosin, though, so they do it in a way that's like, I can't exactly. Well, it's THC A.
Well, that's the other thing is that when they read the farm bill, it only references to THCA or THC, but we all know that THCA is the precursor to THC in the plant. So these people are all hiding behind this so-called loophole, thinking that somehow. But if you read the Code of Federal Regulations, and most lawyers would, it says that you have to apply gas chromatography, which, as you know, will decarboxylate your THCA and convert it into THC. So there is no real loophole there, but you'll see like cookies and other brands like this, Mark, selling THCA diamonds a gram at a time. And it depends, like some state, like Vermont doesn't allow it, so you can't ship it into Vermont, but in certain states, you could ship that shit over state lines. And the other thing that's happening is they're taking cheap bulk hemp that's grown outdoors and they're spraying it. And not only spraying it, they're actually adding THCA isolate. So you could actually add THCA isolate to hemp flower and then putting it into the pre-roll. I mean, how fucked up is the market that's like throwing sand down at the beach, right? It's like,
so can I explain the way that they actually do get that loophole? And so the testing of the flower is a USDA umbrella. So, and that has a 30-day harvest window. So you need to test 30 days before harvest to show that you're at below 0.3% Delta 9, and that is combined total THC, right? So that's where it gets decarboxylated. So if you're growing a 60-day variety, now I know everyone is going to just jaws are going to drop, but if you're growing a 60-day variety and you send in your harvest sample at day 30, there's not a lot on the plant. Okay, so then you pass your Delta 9 USDA inspection, right? So then you go to full harvest on that plant and you harvest it. And now you know that you're way over on the total THC, right? Because you now got a right plant. At USDA, it's no longer in their purview. Now, all that needs to happen is that your COA has to show that you're at 0.3% Delta 9. So now the THCA number, regardless of whether it's a total THC, it never gets decarboxylated because it's separate. So now all you got to do is keep the supply chain cold enough that your 0.3 never goes over 0.3.
Yeah.
And now you can sell that all over the place, even though your total combined could be in the 30s. It could be all over the place. So it's a ridiculous loophole, and it's all about the harvest window. But the other thing that I find interesting, because the guy Rod Knight, the attorney who's had a lot of, he's the guy who's been kind of behind. Rod Knight, right? Yeah, he's the guy who's, I think, is on the Cookies website. But basically, what he says is that even though they only mention Delta 9 in the Farm Bill, they exclude a bunch of other things. And the fact that they put an exclusion in there implies that it was on purpose. Meaning if they excluded derivatives, they excluded alkaloids, salts, whatever other things, they said, let's give it broad language. So you're saying it's only Delta 9, not all these other things? Let's not mention what the other things are, but let's just say not all the other things.
You got to remember, Mojave, with all due respect, that he is a paid shill for the hemp industry.
Yes.
Okay? This guy is.
Hey, before we get too off
to...
point, Wade had his hand up, so I want him to be able to speak on what we were talking about before we go too deep into it, and then we can get back to the paid shill.
Because I just got to speak up as a patient and a longtime advocate for patients. On the one hand, the ready availability of hemp products, if they are free of contaminants, is a real gift. It's a boon to people. It's inexpensive, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is, as we've discussed, greed comes into it, and people will do whatever they can to create a product that will sell. And what's happening in the California market is the people who are good actors are being undercut and undermined by the whole hemp industry. And the sad part is there are actors in the hemp industry who are good actors, who are doing good work, who are creating good products. But we don't know who they are for sure. And then if you go into the legal market, to what Mojave was talking about with this thing down in LA, what we're seeing is cannabis crops showing up with compounds that are not listed in the prohibited compounds under California law. They're not even, they're prohibited under federal law. So of course, California didn't call them out extra, but they're showing up in cannabis that's in legal dispensaries because California law doesn't require producers to test for that particular contaminant. And I know I'm ranting. I may not be making a lot of sense, but to me, the real tragedy here is, again, prohibition has created all of this crazy bullshit that is not serving anyone other than maybe some bureaucrats who are looking to keep a job. I grow your own and do it regeneratively. You can make your own medicine fairly easily. I'll stop there. And if you can't do it, come to Nevada County in California. There's a whole bunch of regenerative practitioners right here. And I'll stop there. Much love.
Awesome. Thanks, Wade.
Thank you.
All right, back to the paid shill.
No, not exactly. And I think that the point that we're all seeing is that, is it a loophole, and how long are people going to profit during the loophole? And then what's going to come on the other side? Because something will, and they'll definitely ratify it or change it because it's kind of cuckoo. And also just to follow up on what Wade said, all the hemp products and the THCA products and the THCP and all the different things that are sold all over LA at head shops, those are dirtier than the products that were tested. So let's not assume that the hemp versions that are being sold in gas stations and stuff are cleaner than the state regulated stuff. That was really dirty. Yeah. So it's like they're not even being tested. They don't even have. It's just wild, wild west. So it's just kind of a mess, and I don't even know what to say about that.
There's a gentleman in the chat named Dennis K. He wrote, the loophole was almost 30 pages that defined D9 as a controlled substance. That's not a loophole. That's an intentional act. He also mentioned, while you were talking about how to keep the numbers down, he said, I run a grow in Wisconsin. We test our plants at week 2 of flower to get less than 0.3% THCA-Delta 9, then do an independent freeze-dried sample at week 9 to get a clean COA just prior to harvest. So just wanted to throw that in. He seemed to have some knowledge in regards to.
Well, so like with the regulation at harvest, the USDA's regulation ends. So like if you wanted to produce corn and produce cans of corn, then you would need to build a factory where your productions of cans of corn are regulated under FDA guidelines, because you're now taking that harvested crop and you're turning it into food, right? And so this is where the ball's been dropped, which is that the Food and Drug Administration is supposed to regulate crops after they're harvested, because that's where the USDA sort of washes their hands. And so, with no regulatory pathway that's compliant to bring CBD products to market, what did they expect to happen? So now all this CBD was produced. You know, at the beginning of the Farm Bill, a kilogram of CBD was like $7,000 a kilogram. Then maybe a year later, it was about $2,000 a kilogram. Now that same kilogram is down to $200 a kilogram. So the conversion of CBD into THC has been known for a long time. And, you know, it's not a clean process, and it depends on how well engineered that process is. You're going to get multiple products. To say that we don't know what's in these products is not entirely accurate, because if you look at like Josh Swider from Affinity in San Diego's for one, or Chris Hudala from Pro Verde in Massachusetts, they'll show you on the COAs that they test for all these non-natural isomers. Not all of them, but like things like iso delta 8 and iso delta 4-8. There's now certified reference materials, so third parties can basically test for those things. And so people like Josh will tell you that, yeah, I could distinguish a synthetic THC that's been chemically derived versus a natural THC, which has been extracted from cannabis plants, which I think is where we all want to be. But this synthetic thing kind of popped up because of what Wade mentioned, the one word, greed. But it also mentioned from the fact that they unleashed this 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is the hemp industry, without properly contemplating how to properly regulate it. You know, it's not a drug. Well, I guess Epidiolex is a drug. It's an approved drug that you can get a prescription for, that you can buy at a drugstore. Yeah, that's an approved drug. But cannabis, for the most part, is a medicated herb, right? And they need to come up with sensible regulation. And even the FDA threw up their hands and said, yeah, this doesn't really fit into our monomolecular medicine model, which you take a active ingredient through clinical trials to show that statistically the outcome for that patient works better when they take that medicine at this particular dose. Well, cannabis doesn't work like that, right? And if Meshulam teaches us anything, teaches us it's not just about the single ingredient, it's about all the ingredients that are in there and everything that we like about the varieties that you guys breed and the hash that you guys make. I mean, it's an incredible thing, but it can't be regulated. And I think the hemp industry and the cannabis industry are fighting at one another. And in some estimates, they size that hemp industry as being greater than $60 billion. You know, that's greater than all of the collective cannabis industries in all the different states. You add all that together, the hemp industry is bigger than that, because larger addressable market, everything's about cost, everything's about making the cheapest thing that suffices out there. You know, how do you tie that together? Somehow you got to figure out a way to tie that together. Big beverage is now in here because of what's happening in places like Minnesota. So now you have, you know, these canning lines that could make literally thousands of cans an hour of this hemp derived D9 10 milligram beverage. I tell you, when it's nano emulsified, Mark, even seasoned THC users like us, I can taste it about halfway through the can. I'm like, whoa, holy shit. That nano emulsification really does something to the biological activity and the onset of activity. So I'll stop there, but I just think that, yeah, Mojave, I don't know what you're seeing in California, but everywhere else in the United States, the cannabis industry and the profitability are in the toilet because they have to compete with this unwieldy hemp industry, which I think they're losing the battle.
I think the hemp farmers too, if they only really understood that, you know, there's huge money in the grain of the plant. Like here in Canada, our hemp industry is not CBD. It's just not a big part of what we do. We grow grain. We grow the seed, and then the seed gets either crushed into oil or it gets dehulled and sold as hemp hearts. And that is a massive business.
Right. Which is
because
not a
it's
drug
grain
variety.
the
You're
world
not
needs.
growing a
No.
canopy. Right. It's just completely
No.
different.
If,
See,
if
I think
It's actually follows
government,
the laws
I
of
don't know,
0.3%.
Mojave, don't you think that the people in Washington were snookered on exactly what Mark is saying? I think that they viewed hemp as being this industrial grain that makes seed oil. By the way, there's new studies that show what we predicted back on Hash Church many years ago, that if you feed hemp seeds to chicken, those chickens are healthier. Well, now Tyson has got that data, and it's just, yeah, it's a wonder if we predicted it on Hash Church. Wade's clapping. But
If
yeah, I think that our government was thinking seeds, oil, rope. They did not contemplate CBD, right?
I could, and if Rob were here, he would say, because we've written about this quite a bit, it's just simply what is hemp? Because that's the big discussion in the US. And I've consulted in Minnesota for the past almost 4 years now. And it's pretty weird, the transition that's happened there. And it's kind of like become this petri dish for what is cannabis? What is the big C genus cannabis? Because it started as a no flower medical only state where it was just vapes and gummies in the Delta 9 world. And then quickly CBD became a thing and people wanted to grow it, but they didn't know like what they did. Literally farmers were growing plants. The farmers themselves didn't know what the downstream product they were making was. Someone just literally showed up and said, hey, plant these seeds. It's going to be good for you. And they kind of had an idea. So is it CBD? Is it fiber? Is it grain? It was literally that confusing. And I can tell you stories about literal harvests where people backed semis filled with plants into big manufacturing floors, and they didn't even know what was the product that was going to be made because they jumped so fast as farmers, like, hey, we grow plants. And they say this is a big economic boom in this. Anyway, over the years, it's transitioned to almost the most liberal model for cannabis on earth. I mean, I drive from Minnesota gas station to gas station. Every single gas station is selling cannabis beverages and vape gummies. You can get cannabis beverages on tap at a bar in Minnesota, which I don't even understand how that works because they do have regulations on per serving amounts. And on tap, it's pretty vague what 16 ounces is or 12 and anyway, and they have adult use. You can grow up to 8 plants at home. They've been incredibly forward thinking in their social equity program with the tribal relationship in terms of giving tribes a head start into the rec market. That being said, the whole thing is still wacky because it's an island in the middle of this big crazy continent of cannabis laws. And they also have interstate commerce bans on what can and can't come in. But the far out thing is just like other states. It's not based off of federal DEA guidelines. It's their own. Like in California, you can't order a BB gun on Amazon, right? They'll ship it to you in other states, but you can't order one because that's just a California law. We don't take BB guns online, And Minnesota's like, well, we also don't take THCA online. It's like, it's not whether THCA is legal in the state or whether it's legal wherever, but we just have a ban on imports because they know how threatening it is to their emerging market. That California, Colorado, and Oklahoma, who are now not even, now, and this is the big question mark, is that it's CBD is so cheap because people grew so much that they couldn't sell or process. Are they now going to be growing THCA instead of high CBD varieties in order to just circumvent the processing completely? And is that going to be the new Farm Bill crop in these states that are still?
Well, the problem with, well, there's lots of problems there. You know, I come from the regulated cannabis world. You know, I know about the hemp world, but I'm more along the lines of like, you know, getting licensed operations growing, you know, and we have to do background checks on all of our employees. We have to have security cameras 24/7, you know, the whole 9 yards. I mean, this is like the cannabis industry, treated like nuclear waste kind of shit. Believe me, I'm not about the over onerous regulations that they apply to it. But if you look at it again, I don't think the intention of when Congress passed the Farm Bill was to unleash active pharmaceutical ingredients on the farm. I just don't think that that was the case. And I don't think, again, I think they were snookered on seeds and rope and oil. I don't think they ever thought about, you know, the CBD versus THC and converting CBD into THC. Hell, that chemistry is as old as Roger Adams. So the worst thing is that there's products like THCP, which don't come from hemp and don't come from CBD, that are just completely synthetic. And if they're completely synthetic, well, now where can you get completely synthetic active ingredients, pharmaceuticals made? Places like China and India. So now it's just, you know, again, these aren't being extracted from plants that are grown in the ground. They're chemicals that are made in the laboratory that are exploiting the wonderful activity and safety, really, of phytochemicals. But I've heard from a few people that have tried this THCP thing, and it is serious business. It like puts you down in your chair, and like for 2 days, you don't want to smoke anything or be around anything like weed. And it's like, that's not a very pleasurable experience. Yeah, can you turn up the volume of compounds that can agonize your CB1 receptors? Absolutely. That's the way medicinal chemistry works. But there's something that's great about the cannabis plant is it's got more than just THC, right? So you'll know that your experience with cannabis doesn't necessarily have to do with the THC level. The reason why the THC level is so important in commerce is because of prohibition and because of like of when dispensaries and distributors are doing bulk buying and they're like, gee, am I going to buy the 25% or am I going to buy the stuff that analyzes for 15%? Chances are the stuff that's analyzing for 25% is really 15%. They're just cherry picking their data that they're getting their COAs made on. All this is just an artifact of prohibition. And I think like the last thing just about the hemp thing is that, you know, there's, yeah, probably people who are going to listen to what I say and say, oh man, you're against the plant, you're against taking. It's like, no, I'm all about the plant. But if people want cannabis and they want THCA, they need to end prohibition, because only when prohibition is so, I've said this many times before, as long as there's prohibition everywhere and anywhere, there'll be a black market everywhere. And so, like in California, for example, right? It doesn't matter what the laws are in California. The laws are fucked up in other places. So California becomes basically the supply chain. And I think the worst thing that's happening now, again, is that there's this war between businesses that are trying to get products out through the hemp channels versus cannabis channels. They're in lawsuits together right now because, again, the folks in Southern California, because they've had to pay large dollars to get their places licensed and to get their places up and running. And now there's an unfair competition from this, you know, competitive landscape that's outside their jurisdiction, that's bringing cheap products into their state. You know, it's the perfect storm. It's going to be interesting to see how this changes, if it changes at all, in the next version of the Farm Bill, which, as you know, Mojave, they just kicked the can down the road. But, you know, it's an election year. Who knows? Maybe things will happen and they'll end up deregulating the plant. I think moving the Schedule 3 is an absolute non-starter, because if you read the regulations, you know, none of the cannabis supply chain that exists today would be compliant with Schedule 3 listing. So I think this is basically an invitation for big pharma to come in and start acquiring MSOs that are positioned to get, you know, their GMP certifications. So I know I'm doing a lot of talking here, but yeah, things are fucked up down in the States, Mark. But you know, hopefully everything will move forward because of people's love for the plant. And I like to almost put it back to like microbrew. I mean, once you let the microbrew kind of bug out, there were no, you know, no going back for some of us who will never drink Budweiser again. I'll only drink a locally brewed microbrew, right? So I think maybe with cannabis, again, artisan quality will really come through on that, and that'll end up winning. Uh, anyway, so much about Walmart hemp and cannabis. Don't get me
Yeah,
started.
there's no shortage of it for sure. Yeah, it's always a balance, right? You know, the whole time. I bet you most people are happy with the vape pen gas station THC P diluted with CBN or whatever. Like, I don't know. We are the anomalies. Our group is a special group that's like, you know, part of a smaller group that will grow, just like I'm sure IPA beer has grown. I don't know what the percentage of IPA beer is versus like Coors and Old Milwaukee and Budweiser.
Microbrew, you mean?
I'm suspecting
Microbrew in
it's,
general. You mean like
yeah,
locally brewed microbrew? Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
compared to big beer. You know,
right.
what does big beer own of the beer industry? Is it like 50% or is it like 80 or 90%? I have no idea.
Well, that's it, Marcus.
Oh, Mojave,
I
you're
could go into
muted.
my Costco down here and I could certainly buy huge pallets of Bud Light, but right next to the Bud
Oh,
Light, there's
hey,
some locally brewed Vermont beer that's so much better,
awesome.
right? So yeah,
But people aren't buying it by the pallet, probably.
you probably not.
It's growing. It's growing. We'll put it this way. It's funny because me and Rob write a lot about the comparison between hops and cannabis and also the craft beer and craft cannabis kind of issues. But as craft beer grew, what happened, Marcus, was the big alcohol bought all the craft companies. So there are now, that's why microbrew became a thing. You know, and now it's actually nano brew because even the microbrews are often owned by Anheuser-Busch. But to that point, it got and I say this, you know, it's like, hey, if you know, if it made their beer better and it expanded, it said, hey, we're Anheuser-Busch and we think we can sell that to our customers as well, then it to me, that's a better world. And I think our quality of cannabis, the big issue to me is that cannabis is really complex, but growing it is just agriculture. And as soon as we figure out the growing part, it's actually not a lot harder to grow amazing cannabis that tastes amazing and has a great effect versus complete shit. Once they figure it out, it's like you can get, I mean, I can go and buy blueberries from Chile, or I can buy an apple from New Zealand and it's perfect. And it's like the whole supply chain, we can grow amazing weed for people. And they can be big, giant corporations that will be involved, and there'll be small companies that'll be involved. But ultimately, right now, it's just a mess because there's so much data and so much transition going on that people, you know, it just opens up a can of worms. But I do think like when like, and that's one of the biggest issues for me is like, you can't hold the plant to a higher standard than other plants. So you can't blame agriculture for wanting to be involved. You can't blame business as usual for being involved because that's just the way it works. We've always tried to normalize the plant. But like we're supposed to be like the shepherds that make it through that transition to hand the plant over to those people who are going to take it anyway. Like, so we have a little bit of a like protector kind of entitlement over like shaping the future industry. And the cool thing is I think like working with the right people, becoming successful with your brands and your genetics and all that shit really shapes the future of cannabis. So it's like, you know, I don't think that, you know, it's all doom and gloom. I just think that it's going to be a completely different thing on the other side, you know, and that's cool because that's what we all kind of wanted, It's difficult to hold the hand through the transition and take the blows. But
I think if you look at like what's happened in retail in general, I mean, we've reduced it down to Costco, Walmart, and Jeff Bezos, right? I mean, the whole distribution business model. I mean, those big corporations you talk about, Mojave, those are the ones that are basically predicated on roads and cheap gasoline for their trucks to basically go from their fulfillment centers out to those stores and put all those goods. And so, like, when you're in Walmart and when you're making Walmart purchase, yeah, it would be great. Like, again, I don't know when Walmart and Cannabis are going to team up, but when they do, it's going to be like, yeah, it's just going to be part of your shopping, right? Like, oh, I can get a pair of blue jeans, I can get motor oil, I can get, a pack of chicken breasts, and oh yeah, I can pick up some weed all underneath one roof because they own that distribution channel. And that's super powerful because, like, when you're looking at like dispensaries, like I was giving some advice to a client of mine around, they're like, okay, we gotta think about where we want to put our dispensaries. I was like, you know what? Next to the BMW dealer, you right? I mean, it's like today in retail, I mean, you have to think about so many different patterns about like how humans purchase things and where humans go to get things. And my God, when you're sitting at the I don't know, McDonald's drive-through, let's hope you're not if you're watching the show, but you're looking at, I don't know, some sign like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna go pop over to that store because I just was looking at that sign while I'm sitting here waiting for my kids and their Big Mac. Like today, retail is a completely different game. It's completely different, just even in the last 4 or 5 years. And I don't know. I mean, like if you're going to introduce like retail cannabis, I mean, my God, ask the companies that have put a lot of money into their dispensaries. You have to, really, the, again, draw people in. You have to have aquariums. You have to have like nice couches and everything. What's the differentiator at cannabis retail? And ultimately, like, yeah, what are you up against? Someone just putting an $8 vape pen on their credit card, that they're going to get shipped to them a day later with their Jeff Bezos package from Amazon. It's a different retail marketplace. It really is.
Yeah, and you're not even getting into predictive algorithms that actually manipulate and predict the buying patterns of the humans, because it's not just about fitting in and finding your place. That's a rabbit hole that, unless you're a complete and total sociopath, you probably don't really want to go down that rabbit hole.
Well, Marcus, I don't mean to make cracks at like celebrity branded cannabis, but I've always thought that, if you need celebrity branding to sell your cannabis, find better cannabis, right? I mean, like, right? I mean, don't you feel like that too, in a way? I mean, just like this whole branding thing. I mean, you might buy that Bob Marley jar once, right? And now, oh, you got that nice jar. What do you do with it? Put it on the shelf with all your other jars.
Yeah. For me, I'm more interested in the branded ones that like the name means something, like a hash maker or a grower or both, who's doing, you know what I mean? And at that point, it's like I think of my brand more along in the lines of that. Like people are like, okay, this guy like sort of helped pioneer the water extraction thing. It's been like focused on producing quality. What's that?
Hash before hip hop, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, well, geez, I think we've done 2 hours. That was pretty good for me today. I think I really appreciated the conversation. It was very natural, like it was a year plus ago, just getting into it and having good discussions. And I learned things today that I didn't know that were going on. I'm definitely going to look deeper into that LA Times story, Mojave, about the vape pens and the hardware and the shit that they're putting in those. That is not a good scene at all. Brian, always a pleasure, dude. I hope you come back with more flavors. We'll have another Hash Church here next Sunday. Mojave, thank you so much for your perspective and your knowledge and your stories. Love the stories when you and Brian were going back and forth. I love that old history, you know, because it really is like, you know, we need to get Chris Bennett back on, the cannabis historian, because Chris has always gone further back into the history, but I think his ability to keep history, to receive these stories and to put them to pen would be a very valuable addition to our community. Papa Sift, Ryan, thanks for showing up, homie. Thanks for making the good hash, and fucking maybe next time we'll talk about the differences between the Osprey and the Hashtag, because you're one of the few people that have both of them in your lab and you're operating simultaneously with both of them. So we'll get you talking about that next time, dude. Dr. Mark Saldone, thank you, dude, from Vermont on the good side of town. You and Brian must not be too far away from one another.
Like 4 hours.
That's not too bad. That's worth like a dab session. You guys should link up one of these days. And of course, Wade, thank you so much for coming, dude. Thanks for sharing your story and your vibe and your positivity. And I hope to see you guys again next week. I'm going to do it again, invite a couple of new people. If you have anyone that you're thinking of that you want to get invited on for next week, just send me an email. And in the meantime, thank you guys, everyone on YouTube. We just went under 200 people, but we had over 200 people watching for the full 2 hours. So that's pretty awesome. Big thanks to Bingo Lombardi for holding down the chat, and all the good folks that are in there chatting away and keeping it going and agreeing and disagreeing with us at the same time. And a big thank you to Thomas from Grandmaster LED for, you know, hooking me up with the knowledge on how I can change the view, for coming in and sharing. You're a great new addition to the panel here on Hash Church. And I will say, may the full melt bless you sooner than later. You're all welcome to say goodbye, and then we'll end it. Peace, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Marcus. Nice to talk with you, Mojave. Nice to hear from everyone.